is interested in accepting. And there's a draft land disposition agreement, I think would be the next step. The goal being to have that land disposition agreement go to town meeting for approval. So, I mean, I think at a high level, that's kind of where we are. Beth or Michael, I don't know if we have a draft LDA yet to circulate or what the process will be for that. I assume there'll be some comment period or something on it.
Yeah, so the board at their meeting on March 7th, I believe, voted to place an article on the town meeting warrant to move the project forward to town meeting. And so we, Mark Toogood and I are working right now with town council to develop the land, to the LDA. And then we will have that going forward to the select board for review. We'll have to discuss it with Civico as well, and then we'll be rolling that out ahead of town meeting for comment from various parties. One of the big things is that we're doing the Waterfield article as a special town meeting. So the idea is that it would be open. We haven't ironed out all the details, but the idea is that it would be open the first night of town meeting and then postponed to a time certain, which would be at some point at the end of town meeting in May. So that would give us more time to kind of work out the details of the LDA.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things that's still part of Civico's proposal is a loan from the Affordable Housing Trust, and I think that's why we want to have a special meeting to dedicate some time for us to discuss that and kind of how it fits into the project. I would think the select board and finance committee would want to hear from us about our perspective on that request from Civico.
Right. I think it's important that this group take a position as, you know, that is a key part of the kind of overall financing for the project as presented.
Right. So, I mean, among the six of us are here between the, do we want to, I mean, does Tuesday the 5th and to Thursday the 7th work for people at 5 o'clock? And I can track down Chris and Mike and see if those work for them. Is that possible? So hold them for for a day if they don't join us tonight.
The 5th works for me.
The 5th works for me as well, but you said the 7th was the other option?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one I can't do.
Okay, so the 5th seems to be preferable.
Yep.
All right, so
I couldn't do either.
Okay, so let's try for the 5th at 5 o'clock, and we'll see as Chris and Mike either join us or I'll track them down, and we'll see if we can nail down a time for that. And then we'll probably get out some additional information to everybody before the meeting so that we can frame our conversation. Just briefly, Washington Swanton, does Beth or Michael, is there an update on what's happening with that?
So the board moved forward with hiring an appraiser to evaluate the value of the property with the restriction that was placed on it at fall town meeting, having all units have to be qualified under the SHI. And so we expect to have a report from the appraiser coming for next week's meeting for the board to review in executive session.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we plan on moving forward with an article to ask town meeting to remove that restriction, based on the appraisal. So I think that's the town meeting action in front of us.
Mm-hmm. Great. So it sounds like we'll have a little bit of time to maybe take a position on that as this evolves over the next couple of weeks before town meeting.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, does anybody have questions about those two projects that we should just answer now before we jump into giving the rest of our time to Mass Housing Partnership?
Marty, I just wanted to mention that on the for the Washington Swan Street project, the town is moving forward with the borrowing for the cost of that taking, which is the 5.27 million. And the town is receiving state ARPA funds that are dedicated to go into the Affordable Housing Trust. That the intention was for those funds to be used to pay the ban interest for that first couple of years. So we're working right now to get that money from the state, but that should be coming, I would expect, in the next couple months.
What's the amount, Beth?
150,000.
Okay, and the legislation just said it was for affordable housing. It didn't specifically say it was for Washington Swanton. So
It
we
says
would-
to be dedicated, right, to go into the town's affordable housing trust fund.
Okay, so we would need to take action to kind of officially tie the bow around that.
Yes. Yep.
So perhaps before our next meeting, Beth, you and I can talk about how that would work and gather some information about, how long the $150,000 would last and some questions that people might have about that.
Sure.
So
Yeah,
that we
yeah.
could-
The board is voting Monday night on the issuance of those bans, so we'll have
Yep.
a better idea of what those payments will be.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so it sounds like we'll probably need to get some briefing on that and how that will work for the trust. Okay. Anything else on those two projects? I know we're kind of rushing, but I'm trying to keep us on track. Slow me down anytime anybody wants to slow me down. I tend to kind of, just as you guys are getting to know, I tend to like to plow through things, but please interrupt me if anybody wants to add something or, have a question.
This is really the only efficient meeting I attend, so I appreciate it. I mean, it is unbelievable the way some of these meetings go.
Yeah.
I heard Anka moves pretty smooth. though,
Oh
doesn't
my
it?
God. I was at an ENCA meeting last night, and actually it actually went pretty fast, but I think because it was our first in-person meeting in like 2 years or something. And I think they thought that everyone was just going to show up. And of course, that was not the case, because all the old ladies wanted to stay home because they don't want to, they're still a bit scared about COVID, and I don't blame them.
Yeah.
So, but yeah. It's painful.
All right, well, we'll just keep this one going. And as I said, feel free to interrupt me, rein me in, guys, if I'm going too fast. But I would love to just hand it over to Shelley and Emma, who are here, to help us kick off what we're going to do for the technical assistance grant. And I know, Beth, we do need to get the paperwork signed. I don't know if you saw my note about that, but we'll get that signed.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And it's so nice to be here with you this evening. I'm wondering if we can just start with introductions. I can introduce myself and then I'll turn it over to my colleague, Emma. And if you wouldn't mind just saying, refreshing, some of you I've met, but refreshing our memories about who you are, your engagement with the community, and perhaps why you want to sit on the trust. If you're, are each of you appointed to the trust board?
Yes.
So maybe just say a word about your interest in being on the trust board would be helpful. So I'm Shelley. I work at MHP as a senior project manager in the community assistance team. So our work is all about helping to build capacity on the local level to be supporting affordable housing. And I'm going to turn it over to Emma. Oh, and I've been at MHP for, almost 6 years now. Time flies. Emma.
Hi everyone, good to be with you. I joined MHP as the program assistant in late June of 2021. And I'm here to kind of support Shelley with this technical assistance.
And then if you just, however you want to, we've had introductions with Marty, so you don't have to repeat unless you want to, or someone else wants to start.
Yeah, I
Sorry.
can jump in.
No, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm Stacy Irizarry, and I lived in town for 12 years. My interest in affordable housing just stems, I think, from my own experiences. I grew up in low-income housing, and just want to support our efforts to make housing affordable for everyone.
Thank you. Were you in Massachusetts? Did you grow up in Massachusetts?
New York City. I grew up in the projects in Manhattan. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I can go next. I'm Beth Rudolph. I'm the acting town manager. I'm also the town engineer here in Winchester. I've worked for the town since 2004 in mostly the engineering department. I've been the acting town manager since last October.
Thank you.
I'll turn it over to Robin.
Hey, I'm Robin. Oh, am I muted? No, okay. I'm a 7-year resident here. And this is the longest I've ever lived in one house my entire life. We're just talking about this with my kids today. I didn't grow up in a neighborhood like this. And my interest in affordable housing, I think, stems from that. You know, we moved every 6 months or so. So I'd love to be able to help other families find some stability in our great neighborhood. Mike.
Oh, thanks, Robin. Mike Betancourt. On the select board and the housing partnership board here. So affordable housing has been kind of, my objective, since I started engaging in town government and local initiatives. So I've been here about 12 years too. So yeah, looking forward to this. And I think, Shelley, I think you first came in front of us a few years back when we were thinking about the Affordable Housing Trust. And, we knew that we wanted to do it and it seemed impossible. And then we're like, oh, this is totally doable. And it just happened. And it was one of those things where you kind of target, oh, this is going to take us 5 years and we've got to have all these meetings. And I think it's something obviously that Winchester needed, but also it's right in the mix all of a sudden of everything that we're doing, which is pretty cool. And the next stop for us, and we can talk about it in the future agendas, is probably tackling a CPA. We don't have any real revenue coming in for affordable housing from the town. And, I know everybody's kind of scared that because we've got a school to build and operating overrides, but at a certain point, it's just crazy that our community is not engaged with that. So anyway, and I see Chris just popped on. Chris, I don't know if you wanted to, we're just kind of going around and doing introductions.
Yeah, apologies for being late, a little work fire drill. Yeah, I'm Chris Galetta, relatively new member of the Affordable Housing Trust. So excited to be jumping in at a time where there's a lot of work for us to do.
Thank you. And Carrie?
I've lived here 12 years. I'm involved with the local food pantry and the schools. And I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama, which has a very different kind of affordable housing than we do up here, even still. But my reason for doing this is spotlighting the need in Winchester, which a lot of people think doesn't exist. So I like to take advantage of all the other volunteer opportunities I have to make sure that it's clear that the need is there. So being knowledgeable helps. I'm trying.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. So Emma and I did have a brief conversation with Marty this morning just to talk through what we'd like to cover this evening. And if you haven't yet, you should have received an email that just has a Word document of my proposed scope based on your application and the suggestions that we make for new trusts of the kinds of work that we think that you should be tackling early on. And so I don't know if you can pull it up yourself. Do you want me to share my screen and pull it up? What's easiest for you?
You want to share your screen just so we can all talk from it? Do that quickly. I think most of us have learned how to make it small enough so we can still see each other. There are not too many of us.
Okay, so if somebody give me the ability to do that, would be
I think
great.
you
Oh,
should
yeah.
be able to. Oh, no, sorry. Here you go. Should be able to now. Thank you.
Can you see that?
Yes.
Do I need to maximize it or is it fine?
I think it's fine.
Okay.
Unless
So,
somebody's looking on their phone.
so some of the key steps, and some of this was explicitly in your application anyway, but we really suggest that new trusts, these are the kinds of things that we suggest that new trusts work on. One is just very simple to create a mission statement. Well, it seems simple, but when you actually get into it, mission statements can be challenging. But for the trust to create a mission statement, so to help to not only focus your own efforts, but also to let the community know how you see your role in the community. And then identifying operating roles. So this is, some trusts just want to have funds in their account and they want to receive applications like a community preservation committee. and then they want to choose what they want to fund. Others want to initiate. So we had several trusts that actually initiated emergency rent assistance during the pandemic. We have many trusts now, a growing number of trusts that are engaged in disposing of municipal land for affordable housing or being more proactive in finding potential sites for affordable housing. And then we have trusts that want to participate in advocacy and education. We have some trusts that want to do all of these or a combination. So this, I think, is an important conversation for you to have early on. And then determining guidelines about how you're going to operate. What are the things that you should focus on based on the identified needs in your housing production plan? How are you going to allocate your, how are you going to structure your financial allocations and application process? How are you going to run? So some of those kind of guidelines. And I'm suggesting that we start with these 3 pieces, and it will likely take us at least a couple months. And these aren't necessarily, I put it as 1, 2, 3. It won't necessarily work that way. Sometimes we'll go back and forth. They can inform each other. But this is my proposal, is that we start with these 3 things, and then that we move into goals, strategies, and tasks. And an additional document that I sent out is just simply a framework that we can work from, just kind of definitions to help us with these different steps. But I think that this will probably take us the most amount of time to decide really what are key things that you're gonna, goals that you want to set for Winchester, for your trust, the kind of strategies that you're going to use to meet those, and then specific tasks to move some of these forward. And then I'm not, okay, there we go. So why am I not able to? Okay, there we go. And to potentially, I'm suggesting that we do some kind of community engagement. It doesn't have to be all the way in September. Maybe that seems like a long time away, but I think that September will be here before we know it. But some sort of community engagement to invite others to reflect on the work that you're doing, how the mission statement that you've drafted, the way that you're thinking of structuring the trust, your initial goals and strategies, just to allow people in the community who are interested to come to hear what you're doing and to invite feedback. And this could be with the new group, the Housing Coalition that CHAPA through the MEI initiative is helping to develop in Winchester. And then I'm suggesting that we kind of end with thinking more in depth about a funding strategy. So what are different ways that the trust may be able to be funded? Start to be thinking about a budget if you haven't already done. I'm assuming that you haven't really done all that so much yet. So this is what I'm suggesting as scope, and then just kind of a really general timeline. And I wanted to just create some space here for you to think about this, to provide some feedback to see if this makes sense. And then I'd like to move into how do we want to move forward with these different pieces.
Just a quick question or thing for us to think about, and you kind of alluded to it, but the funding strategy, and to some extent just how that fits into the operating roles. I think in some ways we might be pushed in a direction just given where we are from a funding standpoint, but I'm just curious, how often you see that interplay become a big part of the challenge and figuring out what one wants to do.
So it's definitely a challenge, but it's kind of the chicken and the egg. Like if there's certain things that you really think that you need to happen in Winchester, like you don't really want to start with the money, because then you may think really small. So it's kind of, it goes both ways. So, I'm putting it at the end because I think that ideally you'll look at the housing production plan, you'll look at the needs that are identified in the community, you'll focus on what seem to be the key things, and then we'll figure out how to fund them instead of by the overwhelm. It can be, affordable housing is so incredibly expensive. The needs are so great. If we just focus on the overwhelming piece of the funding, then we may not really address the key needs in town. So
makes sense.
That's why I put it at the end. So I know that it's going to come up in the conversation. It's inevitable, but I'd rather that we figure out how to fund it later.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts on scope or timeline? Does it seem like there's something that's missing? And Emma, please feel free to jump in as well.
The only thing I think we need to make sure we do at some point in this process is make sure the other kind of housing entities in town are clued in. I mean, I think the public forum is a great idea, which is more broad, but sharing in some way with the housing partnership. And I, for one, have always wanted to try to find a way to pull the housing authority in a little more. They kind of operate as a separate independent entity. And I think a group like ours reaching out to them to just go to one of their board meetings and share what we're thinking about or what we're doing might be a way to start building those bridges. Because, you know, we do have to kind of do this as a team and know what other people are doing.
So there is something missing on my list, and this is exactly it. When you have multiple housing entities, you want to start the conversation early about what each entity is doing and to make sure that you're on the same page with that. So that's absolutely a critical thing. So I'm wondering if it makes sense after we do kind of the first April, May, after we get through 3, where you're starting to identify the things that you would like to focus on, if we then bring in the other groups and have a conversation of what are they focusing on? Is this complementary? Maybe that would make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Before we dig into more goals and strategies where that's getting to be more specific. That's great. Thanks for bringing that up, Marty.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else that anyone can see as maybe missing? So another thing that we'd like to talk about is how to actually do this. So like trying to do a mission statement with a whole group of people, that to start is very difficult. And you know, I do want to acknowledge that in some communities, they might want to know more of the kind of answers to 2 and 3 before they complete a mission statement, because you might want to allude to or mention or identify some of those things. So it doesn't necessarily have to go in this exact order if you're feeling like we should start in a different place, or just start with defining low and moderate income and then getting to operating. So it's, of course, this is just a working document. So feel free to say if you think we should start somewhere else. But we could start with a very draft mission statement that then we modify as we move forward. But stepping back a little bit, to do all of these things with the whole group can be perhaps not the most efficient way to do it. And so perhaps a way is to have a small working group, 2 or 3 people, to do a piece at a time and then bring it back to the full group to meet. And I don't have to be at every meeting. And I can't commit to all of your evening meetings just because I have a lot of communities that I have to show up at. And I have a 2-year-old. So do you have some thoughts about how the process that we might use to move forward?
I feel like if someone's willing to, and not it, come up with a beginner mission statement that then, you know, a couple people review and maybe expand on and then take it to the whole group, I think that is a good way to do it.
Do you have any examples from other communities that might be a good start for us to steal some language from?
I have a lot of those. And so if we identified a couple people that were particularly interested maybe in helping with a mission statement, I could provide a variety of different options that they could use to start with. And then some of this, like number 2, identifying your operating rules. This is something that you can just have a conversation. Like, I don't need to be a part of this, but you just talk about how do you want to function as a trust. So some of these pieces, I don't need to facilitate necessarily. That can be something that you just do. And then others, like if you aren't really familiar with the housing production plan, and I need to get more familiar with your housing production plan, that's something that each of you should be going through. and getting familiar with what are the identified needs in that plan. And I think yours was done in 2018. So it's coming on the end of what's considered the kind of the 5-year, like they go for 5 years. So that should be something that's kind of on your that you're considering for next year or the next year after that when you have to update it. But you'll want to be getting familiar with the needs so that we can really dig into number 3.
I feel like for me personally, it would be really helpful to know exactly what the other organizations in town are doing, because I really feel like I don't have a clear understanding of that. And I think the person who, maybe crafts the first mission statement would need to do that. I think Marty does, but I'm not volunteering her to do it. I'm just saying, I really don't understand. So I think it would be nice to maybe have that meeting with other people in the community, organizations in the community sooner rather than later.
Sooner.
Point, yeah.
I think that would
Because
be
I feel like
a great
it helps
idea.
craft the mission statement, because what if we say, our mission is just like some other organization, I won't know.
So how do you think we might best do that? Do you think it would be good to have somebody come to a meeting, or to say to 2 people on this screen, go and have a meeting with the housing authority and come back and share with us? Like how do we think we most effectively might do that?
Beer at First House? No.
That can also work, yeah.
I mean, I work with the housing authority through ANCA. So I feel like I have more of a grasp on that than anything else. I'm happy to facilitate any meeting with them, just because I deal with Sue all the time. But I don't know if it's like where, one person from each organization goes to one meeting and then come back and report to the rest of us, or I don't know.
Big joint.
Or if you invite one person from each of those groups to come to your meeting and so you all hear it.
Right.
Yeah. And ask them to come and share what they do and kind of what their priorities are going forward. It might be interesting for everybody to hear that.
I
think
think that'd be
so.
way more efficient
like
to have
that
someone
idea.
come to
Yeah.
our meeting than for one of us to go to their meeting and then tell everybody what happened.
Yeah, I agree, Robin. Yeah.
Plus, do they even really know what we're doing? Do we even know what we're doing?
No, I mean, we're trying to figure it out. So I mean,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm kidding. But like, it might be helpful for them as well, is my point. Yeah.
The work that we've been doing with Wellfleet is working with the housing authority, their housing partnership, and their new trust as they're trying to sort out each organization's role. So they decided basically together that the housing partnership would do outreach and education and advocacy. Their housing authority is already running housing programs. They don't actually own units, so they run programs. So they're going to continue doing programs. And the trust is going to focus on development. So that's how they identified roles. And then they built their statements on that. So this is, I think the right strategy is to start that conversation early.
Is there, and this is showing my ignorance of the situation, is there a group in town made up of people who actually live in affordable housing that meets on any regular basis or talks about things from a first person perspective?
I have no idea if the housing authority has an active resident organization. I mean, that would be.
I don't think they do.
One place if the housing authority had that.
But
And
the housing, the board is required to have a member, right, from who lives in the
Right.
housing authority.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
on the board, yeah.
Right.
I mean, it would be nice for me to, I talked to some of the residents through the pantry, but that's very casual and on the go. And, but I've met several of them that would love to do something like that, I think sometimes we get caught up in, all of this bureaucracy, and I don't mean that in a bad way, and forget about the human aspect of it. And it's nice to have a reminder.
Yeah, for the first time, I think we had a public meeting about the Washington Swan Street parcel, maybe in January. And I've gone to a few meetings, similarly talking about various town affordable housing projects. That was the first time there was a resident of affordable housing units that came and gave their perspective. And it was a really good perspective, as one I think everybody needs to hear. So I would second that.
I feel like a lot of the vitriol that we have on, the Facebook page and in general about this would be remedied by these people actually talking to a human. Not that we can get those people in front of these humans, but you know what I mean? It's.
Mhm.
I think it also, from the conversations we had at that one meeting, it helped understand kind of some of the additional fees and items like that do impact the residents, that when you're kind of looking at things in a big picture in terms of what the 80% AMI rent is or whatever, that you don't always understand all those other pieces of it.
Mhm.
Also, this is kind of related, but not like I was trying to help a woman the other day who's a single mother. She's English is her second language, navigate how to apply for a scholarship for after school programs and get on the free and reduced lunch program and bus pass scholarship. And it took me and I have kids in the system. It took me like an hour to figure it out for me. And I have the time. English is my first language. And I have, a husband who helps me and kids who are a little bit older. So if it took me I was getting really impatient with the process. And to the point where I'm like, that's it. I'm writing Dr. Hackett an email, very nice one, but saying you have to make this easier for people. You can't make it this hard for people. And I find that that's, whether it's done on purpose or not in different communities and across the US is a whole other conversation, but it doesn't need to be that hard. And I just, I feel like the town maybe in general needs more clarity with these kinds of things. And I'm not expressing myself well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I think there's been some conversation about that, about how confusing it is, to even figure out where to go, where you might get your question answered or to get help or, it's not always easy.
Right. And they have no idea where to go or to even start. Whereas I, know enough people in town to at least point them in the right direction or make a phone call. But, and that, the town social worker is wonderful and she helps people with this as well. But some people don't even know she exists.
Mhm.
So and the pantry helps a lot with that too, I'll say. But having to, we sit there sometimes and we help people fill out forms so that they can apply for SNAP or, whatever. It's just, it seems insurmountable to me, the amount of paperwork that are supposed to be filling out when they're working 2 jobs and don't have childcare and in the middle of a pandemic.
So if we think the next step is trying to invite folks to come tell us what they're doing, should we set a date for the next meeting or two and identify which groups and elect someone to make the outreach, which I'm glad to do if someone tells me who to reach out to?
Yeah, I think to go through this process, we're going to need to commit to a few more meetings than we've been doing. I think meeting every 2 months is not going to get us on Shelley's timeline or kind of get through that. So, I think that's a great idea for us to really, say how often. Maybe the big question is how often do we want to meet, right? And if we want to do this as a whole, right? Or do we want to have some subgroups? It sounds like for maybe meeting with the Housing Partnership and the Housing Authority and maybe the New Housing Coalition, that might be this whole group. But there may be some things that we don't have to do as all of us. So how often would people be willing to sort of pencil in a standing date on their calendar? Because I find for me that actually works best if you can put a bunch of them out there and then just hold the time. And if they don't have them, you pull them off.
I could do once a month for sure. If we do subgroups, I think that those people may be able to meet separately.
So what are there, we know that the sort of mission statement piece and maybe the active work product development on this might be a subgroup. Are there other subgroups, Marty, that we can think of that, maybe just thinking about that structure will help us figure out how we break into sub-teams here?
Yeah, and I think we don't have to do them sequentially, right? We can have a
Yeah.
whole bunch of stuff going on at the same time. So that's an idea. We could have a subgroup that just decides to jump in and take a crack at a mission statement and do that kind of offline from this larger meeting. And make that happen.
I think if a couple people want to really dig into the housing production plan and identify, kind of make some suggestions around what the trust should focus on, might be a group. So the 3A. And perhaps someone thinking about kind of an application process or some of that structure, or a couple people looking at that. And I can help with the research of how other groups, how other communities are doing it. So you wouldn't be starting on your own, but I could then provide kind of some, not quite project management, but a little bit of helping to move these conversations forward. And then you could come back to the larger group when you have kind of some recommendations. I think that could be helpful.
Yeah, Shelley, I'm happy to help out with the kind of housing production plan and kind of trust focused stuff if anybody else wants to join me.
Yeah, I'm glad to do that.
That's Chris as well.
Yes.
On the housing needs, yep.
Okay.
All right, how about the mission statement? Anybody interested in trying to go through that and think a little bit about what we focus on?
Is that going to be a pretty general mission statement? Because I feel like without completing like number 2 and beyond, how are we going to tell people what we're doing if we haven't decided what role we want to be in the community?
Right, so the framework document that I also sent that I think was emailed, I just put some, kind of define some of these because we we have similar language. So mission statement, I just collected a bunch of stuff, like I synthesized stuff off the internet. So there's a little bit of guidance on that to help focus whoever decides to work on that. And as we said, it might take a little bit of time for you to hear the conversation with these other pieces before you can really complete it, but you might be able to kind of start on just based on what you've already been talking about in Winchester, just to get a sense of maybe just start a little bit working on it, and then knowing that it may take a few months before we get through these other pieces before you can really in on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, another thing that I'm actually thinking about is maybe a couple of us could spend some time thinking about what questions we'd like these other groups that are coming to answer. I'm looking at, Shelley, your list about defining low and moderate income housing. So it'd be really great to understand from the other groups, are they focusing on a particular income segment in town? And there are probably some other, it's not a long list of questions, but it's probably like 4 or 5 questions. If we could come up with those that we want to hear from these other groups, it might really focus the conversation and make it more useful to us. So I'd be interested in doing that if anybody wants to join me in kind of thinking about what our short list of questions is for the groups that we're going to invite to come and chat with us.
Can help with that, Marty.
Who was that, Beth? Yep, great.
Yeah, thanks.
And then would you two also want to take the lead on inviting those groups to a meeting?
Yep.
Sure. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Something else that just came to mind for me, Marty, what you were just saying is I wonder, and you may do this anyway, but just to send them those questions ahead of time. I don't know how basic, or just so that they have an idea so that they can also figure out what their answers might be to those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's the kind of the best structure that could work, is for us to come up with some questions and then, let them know this is how we'd like them to kind of frame their discussion with us.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, Marty, my child came down the stairs yelling when you were talking about that. Did you find someone to help you?
Beth said she would. If you want to join us, that would be great.
Sure.
Okay, good.
We should just, what constitutes a working group for us without having to post a meeting? We should just confirm that maybe with Mary Ellen.
Numbers, yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully, if we have 3, that's not gonna trip up. public
Yeah.
meetings, right, yep.
The note takers on the mission statement.
I kind of feeling like we're not ready for that yet. I'm getting that sense from a bunch of people that it's feeling like we need to think a little more before we're ready to put some words on paper. I don't know.
Yeah.
I do think if you could send us some examples, that might help us get a vision for what
Mhm.
kind of the possibilities of what we would end up with could look like, and that could kind of help kind of guide the conversation a little bit, I think.
In the meantime, if we can do 3 to a subgroup, I'm happy to join the other, I guess, Chris and Mike.
Michael and Chris, okay.
Great.
So then if you're wanting to invite the other groups and learn more about what they're doing and dig in a little bit to that housing production plan and identify some needs, then that might then lead to the conversation around how are you going to define low and moderate income?
Mhm.
And then also number 2 of kind of how you want to function, if you want to be more proactive, if you want to do any advocacy as well, or do you feel like that you've already kind of thought through number 2?
I don't think we've thought through number 2 at all. And I think hearing from other groups, which, we might even in the questions, really say what, to the housing authority, what do you think what's your role in advocacy and education? What's your role in funding, so that we can see where they fit on those.
Great. Okay. Is there anyone yet that might want to start thinking about 3, B, and C, or would you want to hold off on that as well?
It strikes me we should hold off on it.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we have a little bit of the cart before the horse, because we are going to be doing funding and we don't have an application from Civico or anything like that. But I think we kind of just going to have to muddle through that one. But as we're talking to Civico, we probably really should think about, like, what do other people get as applications, and how do you kind of go through this? So.
And Shelley, that might be another one where just some other examples, that might be helpful.
Yep. And I would, even though you're a town and Beverly is a city, they had a nice process, a thought process, and they actually brought in a couple nonprofit developers to talk with their trust and to bring a pro forma of a development so that the trustees could understand what it takes to put together an affordable housing deal. And trust then structure how they allocate their funds. So we could talk as we get further along. We can talk about some of those options if you feel like you'd like to learn a little bit more. Great. So I think we have a starting place, right?
Yep, I think we do. I think we need to kind of get back to the dates and times question before we lose people. So Chris, before you joined the call, we were looking at a time for the Civico Waterfield discussion. We were looking at April the 5th at 5 o'clock, which I think seemed to work for just about everybody on the call. Would that work for you? Okay. Yep. So I'll reach out to Mike Keenan and just let him know that looks like what we're doing, give him a heads up, and we will try to bookmark that time for a meeting on Waterfield. Then I think our next meeting would be to invite, I think we could probably have more than one of these other groups come to one of our next meeting. What do you guys think about that? I don't think it needs to just be one at a time. Would take us 3 meetings, right?
Yeah, so that was gonna be my question. Do you want to invite them all at the same time and have a conversation, or do you want to invite them back to back so that we're just talking to each one individually?
I mean,
I
is
mean, I
there any reason they can't all be at the same, one person from each organization be at one meeting and we just boom, boom, boom?
I think it'd be great to have everybody at one meeting, and hear what people have to say. So, you know, we start running into school vacation week and then into town meeting. I don't know how many people are absorbed by that. I don't, you know, I don't know the schedule and routine.
Yeah.
You know, is school vacation week a non-starter for people just because,
Yes.
yep, that
Yeah.
doesn't work.
Yeah.
And then town meeting starts when, Beth?
April.
The first night of town meeting is April 25th, and then there's no other meetings that week, and it'll jump to May 2nd.
Say that again? Town meeting just meets,
The first night of town meeting is April 25th,
Mhm.
and then the next night will be May 2nd.
So would it be possible for us to meet the week of the 25th at some evening? Sometime like this to try to get the other housing groups to come and join us and do a briefing and discussion?
That seems like enough notice, I would think, yeah.
Okay, I can't do the Wednesday, the 27th. Sorry, I've got something that day. Just generally Tuesdays or Thursday, do either of those work for?
Tuesday is better for me,
Yeah, same.
the 26th.
Me as well.
The 26th? All right, so shall we hold on to the 26th to invite housing people and the 5th for a water field conversation?
On the 26th, are we gonna keep it at 5 p.m.?
That works, I think, for everybody. pretty much.
Does.
Yep.
And then for the groups we're inviting, it's the housing authority, so we invite the director unless there's somebody else you want to include.
Yeah, so
Housing Partnership Board, and then this new coalition.
yeah, I think we should talk about who to invite. I mean, I know less and sometimes more, but it seems to me the chair, I don't know who the chair of the housing authority is, whether you have the
Sue
chair.
Cashel,
Yeah,
her name's
She's
Sue
the
Cashel.
she's the director. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know who the chair is either.
she's the director. Would we want the director and the executive director to both come? I mean, just so the board members hear it. I don't know the dynamics of their organization.
I think
I
we should
mean-
invite both and then let them work out. If
Yep.
they only want one or the other to come.
I mean, I think having worked with Sue in the past, we're gonna get a better read on what actually goes on from her, but
But I think it's good for the board to hear what else is going on in town and to kind of hear from us. So if part of this is trying to make sure all the housing groups know what's happening. Having a board member there, I just think can add to the, even if they're just listening, right? Even if they let Sue do the talking, even if they're just listening and hearing what other people are doing
you'll get a different meeting though.
about,
I,
Well,
I think that people will, I think some people will speak more freely if a board member is not there, but
well, that is true. What do you guys think? Invite the director? I mean, we do have to develop kind of this list of questions, so,
I kind of defer.
you're cutting out, Mike.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
yeah.
Yes.
No, sorry. So I just gonna say I defer to Carrie Sue on this one just because she seems to know like a little bit more of the personalities there. It doesn't mean that we have one meeting and then we never have one again. It means maybe that we invite, different groups of people at different times. And certainly as we update the housing production plan, and we're gonna do that anyway.
Yep, that makes sense. I can see that, yeah.
I think selfishly, for a real understanding for me,
Mhm.
like, excuse this, but I just feel like I need a no bullshit meeting where I'm told what actually goes on
Mhm.
and not just mission statements and things like that. I want to know what actually happens because that's how we figure out what we need to do,
Mhm.
you know?
Yep. All right, so let's do that. So let's invite the executive director, and then I assume it would be John for the housing partnership because he's the chair, John. And then after tonight's meeting of this housing coalition, I'm not sure, I'm not sure what the right person or persons is for that. It's kind of loose and amorphous at this point. The Network for Social Justice is driving it, but I'm not quite sure. We could kind of pause on who that might be.
I deal with Jane Lovins a lot. She's with the Network of Social Justice. She's a friend. I could ask her who she suggests.
Yeah, she hasn't really, she hasn't been very active in this housing group. I don't know if she's got other things.
Well, she works full time and I think she, is kind of on the fringes, but she seems to know what goes on over there.
Yeah. Xenia or Leora, or I don't know if one of the volunteers, so I'm not quite sure how this is gonna go. Hillary's been involved in it too, so.
Hillary. What's her last name?
Oh, of course, I can't remember.
Turkowitz. Turkowitz.
Yeah. I'm just trying to see who's been on this. There's kind of been a planning group that's been working on this for tonight, and I don't have the whole list in front of me of that group. So. Well, Beth, Robin, and I will get together and we'll talk about questions and kind of help figure this out. And Carrie, so if we need you to ping somebody, we can circle back and see what we do about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay. Look at that, 5:59. What else? What other issues are we going to solve tonight? Shelley, how'd we do? Did we make through what?
Fantastic. We have a
wanted?
great next step. So I will put together just the mission statements. I know that you're not going to jump into that right now, but just so we have some, and I'll also put together some materials for for Michael, Chris, and Stacy of just what how other communities have identified some priorities, just as kind of a starting point for you as well, and also through the housing production plan so that I'm more familiar with the language. And I think that those are some good next steps, right?
Great.
Sounds good.
Sounds great.
Nice work.
And Beth, will you just confirm for us that it's okay for 3 of us to meet? as
I will.
working
Yep.
groups? And
Yep.
Then we can meet over a cup of coffee and not have to public notice it, but let's see.
Yep, I will do that.
Great. Awesome.
Okay, well, this was great. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to be sending out some information before our meeting on April the 5th, and Chris has offered to kind of help sort through since he knows pro formas and has done deals. So I think we'll try to put some information out to everybody ahead of time and think about how we frame the discussion on the 5th so that we can come up with something that's helpful to the town. And also, kind of as our first thing, I think we need to be careful about what we do and how we say it. So.
And I have the final pro forma that we got from Civico, so I can share that with you.
Great. Is it the same one that went to the select board before, or is it moved around again?
I asked so they gave kind of like a final offer letter on March 2nd. And I asked after we got that letter for them to give me the final pro forma. So I haven't compared it, but I just want to, I'll send that to you so you have it.
Good. Yeah, that's so we make sure we have the right latest version of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay. Do I need a motion? I guess I need to do that, right? Motion to adjourn. And a second.
Yeah.
Do we have to do a roll call, or can we just like all raise our hands on that one, Beth? We're
I think we can raise our hands.
We're good. Okay. All right. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
I think this was great. We got a lot done, so we'll see you
Yes.
soon.
Take care. Thanks,
Thanks.
Stacy.
All right.
Shelley.
Take care.